Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming, taking the time to come, both virtual, non-virtual. Today, some of the senior students from the accounting department at the university and myself will be presenting with the assistance of Bronwyn, Annette and Rob. We will be presenting to you about grant funding and application to accountability. But before I start, I'll cover some housekeeping. The toilets are down the hallway, all the way to the end on the right. In the case of a fire, go down the stairs, evacuate outside. Don't follow Rob, he's a fire warden. In the case of an earthquake, find some cover under a table or in the doorway or something. And we'd just also like to make sure that everyone's phones are on silent before we start. Some areas that we're going to cover today in our discussion are being a good organisation, identifying the need for funding, matching yourself to a funder, telling your story, results and delivery. Today I'm going to be talking to you about what it takes to be a good organisation. A good organisation knows why it exists and why it does what it does. Planning is of prior importance for your business. A solid plan shows a good organisation. Shows that a good organisation is important to a potential funder. A business plan includes strategical and operational planning. Strategical planning is more long-term, over the period of 4 or 5 years or something like that. It's driven by the vision of your organisation. It's more responsive to external environment. What I mean by this is, things that change in the market or technology or the economy and how that affects your business. The strategical plan aligns your programs and services with the plan to keep moving forward successfully. It establishes a good direction for your business to go in and it sets the direction so that you know where the business is going, where the organisation is going. And when it comes to the strategic plan, leadership's accountable. So it's the leadership of the organization's job to set out the plan and make sure that that's all comes into fruition. The operational plan is shorter term and is annually planned. It's driven by the strategic plan. So, goals that you have in the long term reduce down into the relevant accounting period, the accounting period you're in. With the operational plan, you improve on existing programs and systems. You establish your work priorities, and staff and volunteer work groups are accountable. So staff and volunteer work groups are accountable. By that, I'm meaning that they're accountable for the systems and the operations that your organisation does in that period. Budget is aligned with the strategic planning, and also the operational plan. And so the budget, by preparing a budget, you're showing how this plan that you've created can come into fruition. Here's an example of a budget for a non-for-profit. So you can see here where the revenues come in, donations, grants, events, and the expenses. And so by providing this to a funder, that they can see that you are a well-prepared organisation and where their money was actually going. Budgets are of extreme importance for non-profit organisations, but also for any organisation. They assist in succeeding your missions and goals. They provide you with the ability to manage your organised cash flow efficiently. A strong and well-constructed budget is a good representation of your organisation and is of prior importance to a potential funder. The budget is there to help you know why you're spending the money and what it is addressing. I'm now going to pass on to Alex. We'll be talking about identifying the need.
Great, thanks, Oscar. So I'm Alex, and moving on to talk about how to identify the need for funding within your organisation and what this might look like. So we at the DCA help with funding applications for a wide variety of entities operating within the community, and as such, we come across a range of funding needs. So in this section of the presentation, we're going to be talking about how to identify that need for funding within your organisation. So a crucial step in your application is identifying where financial needs may arise, and if so, for how much. So when you're making a forward-looking financial decision for your entity, the first step should always be to consult your planned budget discussed earlier. So having a detailed and accurate budget is absolutely essential in identifying that need for funding. So this is going to offer you a clear projection of upcoming plans and requirements, and you can use this to identify any deficits your regular financials may not be able to cover. So although these figures are purely estimates, they should be dollar specific to help provide insight into how much you need to apply for and when you're going to need it by. So on top of this, your budget should also be prioritized so you know the urgency level of needed funds. So ensure these priority levels are aligned between you and the provider, as these can differ. So these can be split into strategic, aka bigger picture or operational goals. Bigger picture or operational goals, and they will be reflected by your type of budget mentioned earlier. So leading on from this, it is important to note what funds can be used for. So such needs can extend from typical everyday expenses you may be struggling to cover, such as employee wages, power and rent, or they may extend to bigger needs, such as purchasing assets that are necessary as your entity grows in size. So for example, you might need a car to be able to travel to clients in sort of a growing area. So funders support a wide type of funds, and these can extend between both fixed or standalone costs like a car, or variable funds, such as petrol for that car that changes depending on your usage. So funding can also extend to even more complex requirements, such as large projects. So while some of you may just be simple charities providing a service free of charge, our funders do understand that expenses arise in the course of business, and they're looking to provide funding assistance to help you maintain or potentially even grow your operations if the demand is increasing. So in summary, to identify the need for funding, it is best to consult a planned budget, and these funds can be applied to a wide range of needs relevant to your organization. So I'll now be passing on to Alice, who will be talking about finding funders and matching yourself to the right one. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you, Alex. So yeah, I'm Alice, and I'll be talking about finding a funder that's right for you. So you've identified the need for funding. The next step forward is finding where those funds will come from. It is important to do your research into all potential funders available to you via the internet or just asking people around the community. So pictured here is a list of funders taken from the Otago Community Trust website, which is freely accessible to all. There are many funders available to you within the community, such as the Otago Community Trust, Central Lakes Trust, and the DCC, as well as nationally, including the likes of the Lions Foundation and the Southern Trust. Another possible avenue could be crowdfunding with the use of websites such as Kickstarter, Pledge Me, or Give a Little. So when identifying potential funders, keep a record of who they're looking to fund, their eligibility criteria, and the application closing date. Having this critical information on hand will make comparing different funders more efficient and help you keep on track of the application process. So with so many potential funders to choose from, choosing one can be a difficult task. And like dating, it is up to you to choose a funder that is the right fit for your organization. So it is important to choose a funder that aligns with your organization and their values, ethics, and expectations. So you need to ask yourself, why are they looking to provide funding? What are their core values, and do those values align with your own? Where does the money come from? And is there a revenue stream you'd be happy to be associated with? For example, an anti-gambling charity would ideally not want to be funded by pokies money. So you can answer these questions by doing your research into their core values and business operations, looking into any past projects to see who they have funded in the past, and by calling them directly and having a chat about their own expectations. All right, so when you know who you want to apply for funding from, create a funding plan. This plan should include who you are applying with, why you are applying with them, when you need to apply by, what information or supporting documents you need, and how much you will be applying for. Funders will have their own individual requirements when it comes to the application process, so it is important to identify those requirements early on so you can gather all the relevant information and negotiate any setbacks in a timely manner. I'll be passing on to Sam Mikey.
Kia ora, I'm Michael. I'm going to be talking to you about telling your story. In order to stand out when you're telling your story, they get multiple applications. So start off by letting the funder know who you are and why they should fund you. What's your goals, why you're doing what you do, why you deserve their money. You then go on to say what difference are you making, how are you making that difference, do your objectives align with the objectives of the fund, as she said. You need to be able to show how much you do and how well you do it. You need to prove this with numbers. Prove that people are better off by doing what you're doing, and they'll really stand out to the funder as to why they should give you the money. This is results-based accountability. Get all the results of what you're doing, quantify it, and put in your thing. When writing your application, ensure that the question has been answered. The grammar and punctuation needs to be correct and proper. Professionalism is ideal, as well as structure. Make sure it's easy to read and easy on the eye. Try working a Word document. This is easy for editing, easy to accessibility, can be quite easy to lose your progress. It's happened before, so make sure it's savable. Look over the application, make sure someone else looks over it, maybe someone with a bit more experience, expand your perspectives and ensure perfection.
Good evening all, my name's Sam, and I'm going to go over 3 key points over telling the story. The first part is about the kitty of information. So when you're applying for a fund, I guarantee you guys will apply for obviously multiple funds because it's obviously very difficult to get the first application through. So I'll just suggest that you guys keep your bank account details, annual accounts, charity numbers, etc. on one main file, which is easy to access. This way, when you're applying for multiple funding applications, you'll be able to just copy and pretty much paste it all in there very easy. The second key point is your budget. When you're telling your story, you obviously want to sell it to them why they should fund you. By putting your budget in there, it'll really sell to them where the money's going and why you need that money for this and that. The third key point is the line of authority. Make sure that the head of your organisation or charity knows that you're applying for it, because there's some circumstances where if I'm not sure how it works, hierarchy, it's different in every organisation, but if the top of the business doesn't know that you guys are applying, then more often than not, they might not allow it when you actually put in that work to get the funding. So make sure you tick it off the top first.
G'day, I'm Reese, and I'll be talking to you guys about what does a successful application look like. The first point is it's important to have all the relevant information in your application. Any application with missing information is likely to end up at the bottom of the priority pile when the funder is searching through different applications from all your different organisations. It's just like applying for a new job. Empty spaces in the application suggest a lack of organisational skills. The second point is make sure to not have any outstanding accountability regarding other previous grants that you may have gotten in the past. Just like the previous point, this will move your application further down the pecking order, and accountability will be discussed in the next part of the presentation. Apply early. When you send your application in, it is more than likely a funding advisor will read it, then advise on some recommendations on how, and then pass it on to the decision-making committee. So the earlier you submit the application, the more opportunity your funding advisor has to consider it and come back to you with any recommendations. Ensure you meet the funder's grant criteria and understand the parameters around the grant. For example, the Otago Community Trust only provides grants that make a positive contribution in Otago communities. Additionally, some charitable trusts do not consider grants for salaries and overheads. This is important to keep in mind. Include quotes or other evidence for the goods and services you require funds for. This usually requires multiple quotes from differing businesses to prove that these quotes are competitive with one another. And GST, which is an important one that catches a few people out. I've got 2 points to discuss here. The first one is, depending on your funder, your application may require you to provide GST inclusive or GST exclusive amounts for the goods and services you require. Some may require both inclusive and exclusive. And second point, it is important to keep in mind if your funder is liable for GST and if your own organisation is liable for GST as well. All grants from the government or another public authority are liable for GST. Other funders may not be subject to GST. Be aware that if your organisation's annual revenue is higher than $60,000, you are required to be GST registered. And lastly, if you have any questions or are not sure what is required in a certain application, do not hesitate to give the funder a call. This shows you are interested in the grant and allows the relationship to be developed. Funding results. If you have been successful in your funding application, these are some things that you can do to make sure that you're on point. How much did you get? In reality, it is unlikely that you will receive the full amount that you applied for. If you get a partial grant, you should assess what you are able to achieve with that money. This may involve changing your budgets. Accountability. All funders have a legal obligation to examine if distributed grant funds have been used for the purpose that they were granted for. This involves sending appropriate documents to show how and when the money was spent. And if you do get a grant, there is usually a time frame with regard to when the money needs to be spent. For example, the New Zealand Community Trust requires all funding to be accountable within 90 days. Be aware that there will be a time frame and stick to it. And last, write a thank you letter. Finish off by sending a personal thank you letter back to your funder. This is an opportunity to show how much your organisation appreciates the grant. And if you're not quite successful with your application, it is still recommended that you write a thank you letter sending your regards. This helps to build your organisation's reputation, and it is a good idea to call the funder to see if they can provide any insight into why your application was rejected. Any feedback will be helpful for future applications. Continue the relationship with the funder and apply again in the next rounds of funding. And lastly, keep a lookout for other potential funders. There are always other funders out there. I will pass you on to Josh now on the last part of the presentation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Josh, and tonight I'll be touching on delivery. First off, can I get a show of hands who currently use a cash book in your organisation?
Don't know you could does the one that does the books and she's not here.
Right, well, basically delivery is keeping track of where things go. So methods of doing this include a cash book and a profit and loss statement. If a cash book, when a cash book is prepared correctly, it shows how the charity's bank has changed over the year and why. So as you can see we've got a demo of one here, dates ordered in chronological order. We've got receipt and payment, amount, description, and bank balance at the end. So as you can see, it's pretty easy just to look at this on face value. You can see where the money's gone out and how it's come in. The charity's website currently has a format that you can, for a cash book that you can use and download for free. Outcomes and evidence. The overarching question with outcomes and evidence is what difference does it really make? So is anyone better off? Key methods for showing this is taking photos and conducting a survey. So in terms of one by one, photos of the dogs would be a real beneficial way of showing this.
Hundreds of those.
Imagine, yeah. In terms of accountability, Getting it done on time. So basically, some grants require certain requirements. So some grants require a profit and loss statement to be supplied throughout the year. So basically, we're making sure that that's making sure that's get done on time. As you may know, applying for numerous grants during the year can be a bit of a burden. One way to lessen the burden is by creating a grant calendar. So a grant calendar is basically just a calendar with all the application closing dates. So by doing that, you can see the big picture and see what you should be prioritizing your time on at any time of the year. So basically tonight, we've given you a bit of an overload of information. So here's some key points that we want you to take home. Get yourself organized, have a strategy and budget. Be clear on what needs funding. Find a funder that fits. Know why you do and what you do. Build relationships with funders. Know how much you do, how well you do it, and who is better off. Sell your story. Keep track of what you received and what you spent on, and what spent on what. Keep in touch with the funder through the project, plan ahead, and know what to do if you don't get all the money. I think that's our presentation done here. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay,
I'll now pass on to Rob from the DCC. Paul, sorry, my bad.
So I'm Paul Coffey from the DCC, and my role is I received your funding application. Okay, so there are 3 R's we want you to have. The first one is a relationship. The second one is realistic, and the third one is reporting. So it's a relationship. Talk to the funding administrator and say, this is what we do. We want money for this. And then they'll say to you, we actually can't fund it. It doesn't fit within our criteria, doesn't fit within our strategic plans, doesn't fit with whatever it is. And hopefully they'll then say to you, have you looked at, and there's a funding website called Generosity. That funding website is a paid for website, but the generosity of the DCC, you can access it through the library using your library card. Digital resources, click. Your library card is free, anyone can go and get it. And so digital resources, you click on that, it's in the top thing of the DCC libraries website. Click on that, drop down, it says funding or project. I think it's usually, it moves around, there are square boxes, they move around all over the place. Funding or thing, click on that, then you actually have to use your library card and your password, date of birth. So that then gets you into this thing called Generosity, which again will ask you to join up and so they can bombard you with stuff. There are some 3,000 different philanthropic trusts that give money away in New Zealand. And at any one time, there could be 3 or 4 that meet your needs. The problem will be that the one that really fits you best closed last week. Every time, don't panic, all right? But so you've talked to that administrator, you've rung them up and said, hey, this is what we do, this is why we do it. And then you've said, we're looking for money for this. They may say, we can't fund that, but what a good administrator will do is say, what else do you do? And then you're going to get the, well, we can fund that bit of it. Ask us for that bit. We'll have to fund this bit of it. So don't panic if you can't fund the top 2 or 3 things. They're able to fund something else down on your list of things you need to pay for. Okay? Be realistic. So they talked about your budgets. You've got to be realistic in your budget. All right? Don't aim for the sky when it's just not going to happen. And for those quotes and things, keep them realistic. But also, for goodness sakes, don't sell yourself short. So don't ask for 10 grand when you actually really need 30. All right, don't have your budget saying 10 when you need 30. So think about that and make your budget realistic either way. Not too big, not too small, like the porridge, you know, get it right. All right. And ask that funding advisor, what's an appropriate amount to ask for? Not how much, but what's appropriate. Because you don't want to ask for 2,000 when they would have given you 20. But you don't want to ask for 20 and they're only going to give you 2. It makes both years look silly. Okay, so just get that ballpark figure. They'll never be able to tell you what you're going to get because that round they may get 20 applications in, they may get 40 applications in. There may be a variation of how much asked for, there'll be a whole lot of stuff. So they can't give you the exact figure, but let's say give you this is the figure. Because the funding pool they have may only be 20 grand. And if you ask for the whole pool, the committee looks and think, well, they're daft, move that one over. Okay? So be realistic in that. All right? Be concise. And I know that they said tell them what you do, but the first line I want to see is, I want this for this. And it's the amount you want. I want to see in your, what are you asking this for? Then do all the guff about what you do and how marvelous and wonderful you are and how good you do things. Okay? But I want this for this. All right? And have that story that I've talked about here, your strategic story, why we do it, who's benefiting and how they benefit. You've got to have that. Okay? And then the third R is reporting. Spend it. Come back, tell them you've spent it, which you're going to have to prove in some way. And then in that, you report, this is what you gave us the money for. Now, they may say that they gave you money for the administrative side of your operations. You say we spent on the administrative side. However, we did this with your money. And because we've done that with your money, this is the changes we've made in the community. So it's not about the administrator, it's about the changes your organisation makes in the community. Okay. So the key is that relationship. Ring the person before you even start your application so that you know we can definitely go there, or no, we can't. It's just something they just won't fund. And then it saves you time and their time. Because as a funder, the main ones we decline is when someone hasn't rung us, you submit it, it's in our system, so it's stuck in our system. We can't get rid of it until something happens with it. But if it's totally out of what we can't give you, we have to decline it. Okay. So does that conclude this evening? Is anyone having a summer?
Well, we bring questions.
Yeah.
So if anyone online wants to ask any questions, they can
Does
type them
it
in.
help if you have a really good relationship with animal control?
Within the DCC, I would assume it would help if you had a good relationship with animal control and yours.
The reps on them.
Yeah.
That don't have to go to town now. We
Yeah.
get phone calls all the time, Peter Inman and that.
Mhm.
So
The girls. The
So-
girls
So
will
that's an
help you.
individual
Yeah.
thing, because who's in the room, for people who are out of the room, is a dog rescue organisation.
Yeah.
So they're asking about relationships. So those relationships are positive to have, yes.
Good. Because we do that. Good.
Yeah. And
you
you
always
may
ask
be able to
for-
go to them and say, can you give us a letter of support?
Yeah.
For when you're going to the Department of Internal Affairs, it's one missed off your list. A key funder is the Department of Internal Affairs, because they have little pockets of money all over the place for lots of different things. So they're one of the keys. And COGS is a small bit of funding out of the Department of Internal Affairs that will keep your organisation ticking over. They'll pay for some of your rent, they'll pay for your power, pay for some of those different things. Not all of it, but some of it. So COGS is a very important one under the Department of Internal Affairs, DIA. Any other questions? There might be other people who have to answer them. It's not just me.
So the apparently it was hard to hear you what that question was. So the question was that that was a relationship with animal control going to be useful, and so the answer was from Paul there. So yeah, you're hearing the answer and then the question. Any other questions? So so I'll ask a question of you and people online. So what have you picked up that you see that you can go and put into place to help you be fundable?
Sadly, we explore the budgets and things.
It's a bit ad hoc, this organisation.
Not ad hoc, we're just extremely busy and we don't have the time to actually sit there and
Oh.
do the paperwork.
Yeah.
My
So sometimes what the answer was that sometimes you're in the churn, you're in that in the washing machine of doing your business so much that it's hard to get out of that and do the organisation and get your budgets organised and sitting in place.
Oh,
But
we
it's-
were looking for a bookkeeper that they pulled out, and that sort of left us in the lurch because my co-founder works full-time, has a partner, has a bit of a life. I have multiple sclerosis, psoriatic arthritis, so I can't work, so I do all the running around. Kirsten, who's trustee, helps with the running around and everything else. I do the dealing with all the debts and everything else, because 95% of our money goes on debt bills. You know, just part of it. And trying to do budgets and things, just, yeah, so, and we're always supposed to get time to do that.
Okay, so what the art to emphasise is that the students in the room here are highly sought after. They turn up and go to a community group. You are the ones that people want to come onto their committees. All right. And it's really, you know, they do need you to be there to assist them to develop those budgets, to get those things in place. Okay. So your volunteering time will be very valuable in the community. All right. You're all supposed to be nodding at this stage.
And getting really excited.
Yeah. So wherever you end up, pick something, because there will be some group there that will say, yes, come and join us. Okay. What I would suggest though, then there's a way of running meetings that you're not there all night. Turn the meeting upside down. The last thing you deal with in the meeting is the minutes. The second to last is the finances. And then you actually have, there's no such thing as called matters arising. They come straight in as agenda items. You should be able to run your meeting within 1 hour of that. And that's what you want to say. I will join the organisation if you tip the meeting upside down and you run it like that. So it comes out 3 days beforehand. You get the agenda. The agenda says the agenda items, which is blah, blah, blah. And they could be matters arising. That's fine. Then you do the finances and the minutes are just signed off, because in 3 months' time, no one else is ever going to read those minutes again, ever. So get them to turn the meeting upside down and you won't be there for 5 hours, looking in the rear view mirror at the minutes from the last meeting and rehashing them. Same stuff again and again, which is wrist slitting when you're running an organisation. Okay.
So if you're looking for a specific role, like a bookkeeper or treasurer, then you're able to advertise for free through Volunteer South. So they have lots of people looking for opportunities. If you put your opportunity forward, they'll even help you construct, you know, the job description for that. And I know that it's very difficult when you're busy doing the doing to take the time, but a wee bit of time preparing, if you get the funding, if you get the person, you know, it pays off.
Yeah.
And you're here for the long term. We're not going to stop having dogs needing homes.
Tell me about it.
And so, you know, and so what about after you? You know, that's the question we all have to ask ourselves. And so a sustainable organization is a fundable organization, because you have the things in place that allow you to do it this year, and you're looking ahead. How do we do this next year? How do we not run ourselves into the ground? How do we not run out of money? You know, and you know, you mentioned some health problems there. You know, you need to be looking after yourself in order to keep doing this. And so it's always balanced, just like the budget needs to balance. You need to balance your resources too.
And there's some very good job descriptions in a website called CommunityNet, which is the Department of Internal Affairs. They'll have some job description there for volunteers. Plus, go into Sport New Zealand, and there's Sport Fit, it used to be called, I'm not sure it's still called that. They have really good job descriptions there. So they'll have the job description for that treasurer. They'll have it for the chairperson. They'll have it. So it's a matter of cut, paste, plagiarize, search for the name, change it. You know, don't reinvent it, but you know, figure it out. These are the things we need to go by. Oh, this fits with what we're doing. We'll take this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. We don't need that one. Okay. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's out there already. It's been done just a couple of times in the past. Right?
So,
Any other questions through that?
no, there's no questions coming from online.
Okay.
And so we've got the details here if you want a session. So this is things we can help with if you want to get that set up.
Is that stuff tonight online?
We'll
on the
be sharing
website?
the video and we'll be sharing the presentation. So we've got your email, so we'll send it out to you. To help with that, and we'll add in the links that have been discussed here as well. And you can have a one-to-one free discussion. So if you want our view on the treasurer, get in touch. If you want to think about your budget, if you want to do a funding application and you want us to look over it, get in touch. It's a free phone number. It's not going to cost you anything. You come along and have that conversation, tap into the depth of knowledge that's here, and get those other things in place. Is that the funding can make quite a difference.
Yeah, because we run on donations and stalls at the moment.
Yeah.
And like one of our last vet bills was 3,800, which we're paid.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't rescue if we can't pay bills
Yes. Yeah, and so
because we see too many rescues that just keep going and keep going and keep going. We don't want $20,000 vet bill that we can't pay.
yeah, and that's as far as telling your story goes, that's a really important story because you're convincing Paul that actually you know what you're doing. Your budget balances. You're not about to get a $25,000 bill and feel that instead of paying your administrator, you're going to pay the vet bill instead and then ask forgiveness from him and you can't give it and
We
everything
don't
else.
pay our admins anyway.
Yes.
We all do it love.
Yes. Yes. And so, yeah, and it's reasonable that if you've got out-of-pocket expenses, like, your mileage, it's reasonable to be reimbursed for that. It makes it sustainable. It may increase the number of people who are able to assist and ease the burden on you.
Yeah, thing is, co-founder and I want to keep it small
Mhm.
because we see what happens with committees and with
Yep.
other rescues, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want people telling us what sort of dog we can rescue, what we can't do. We make those decisions. If the dog sadly has to be put to peace because it's too broken, they're our decisions. We don't want other people going, nah, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's like, go away.
Mhm.
We started this because of this.
Yeah.
And that's why we stay small.
Yeah.
We do have a group of volunteers, thankfully, and we have fosters because our dogs don't find homes.
Mhm.
But yeah. The charity pays for the petrol to go to Central, because a lot of our dogs from Central, and it pays our pet bills and our registrations.
Doesn't pay for internet though.
No, it doesn't. We don't want it to.
Well, it should
I'm a
do.
volunteer.
Well, you're on a beta.
So,
Yeah.
we don't want to.
So that's
Not
legitimate
about
cost
price.
through costs.
Yeah.
So if you talk to seriously, the administrators and cogs from the Department of Internal Affairs are far better than me, far more approachable. They're wonderful. There's 3 women in town and they're really, really good to get hold of and talk to. So the Department of Internal Affairs, cogs is the one for those sorts of funding stuff. Okay.
Because if it's not funded, we're not going to take money out of charity. The money in the charity is for the rescue dogs, and that's
Yeah.
why it's there. It's not for us to pay our
Yeah.
bills.
But you can ask cogs for some of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're leasing some land
No.
where you're housing them,
No.
but that's what some other things. they
One
might
day
want
we
to.
would like to,
Yeah.
and someone wins the offer and buys us a
Mhm.
lot of land.
Always- Always apply to lotteries at the other end and through DIA and see if that can come. That you don't need to leave it to chance. If you have your as was pointed out, if you have your your vision, your strategy to achieve it, funders are there to assist you to achieve that if it's going to benefit society in the way that they want.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of animal charities out there, or animal benevolent organizations that want to help animal charities. And it is an opportunity, and you don't need to lose your way of doing it. That like you can codify your way of doing it and say, actually, this is what we do. We know why, and we respect it. That you don't need to lose that by working with the right partners.
Yeah.
Does anyone got anything else to add?
Or question?
Cool. So, any more questions? Excellent.
Anybody want to adopt a puppy?
Your landlords won't allow.
Yeah.
I got asked yesterday, I'm in a house in New Zealand house and I'm allowed 2 dogs. Which are only allowed 1 dog. But I'm special.
We've already got pit masters for it. So.
Eh?
We've already got pit masters for it. So we'll take it.
We
Well,
are.
because how they put pictures of the young dogs for them, so they can really say to you, you can't have a dog or 2 dogs.
Okay, right. We'll stop the video before you say that. Right. So thank you to the people online, and I hope that was useful.